It's time to talk about model binding. I have divided this subject to two parts. First for simple types, and the second part would be complex types. When I say complex, it doesn't mean it's complicated or difficult to understand. No. It's just an object. We will talk about it later. Just forget it for a while. Let's see, what does model binding mean? When we try to map the HTTP request data to action method's input parameters, model binding would happen. Let's see an example or something to make it more clear. See, when I have an action method with input parameters like this, get one student. A student ID is the parameter. So then I would try to map the data from HTTP request to this action method parameter. This means model binding. As you can see, Web API receives data requests in the form of HTTP messages. Every HTTP message has header, URL, query string, parameter, request body. It might have some other things also. Okay, let's see these things in Visual Studio by coding. It's not difficult, just have a look. All of you guys are familiar with something like this. Get car by ID, and then the ID is the input parameter of this method to filter, because I need to deal with just one car. Okay, this means model binding, that's all. This means I gonna have an ID as an input parameter, and then when I try to call this method, I need to handle this ID. This method needs this ID. That's all. So in the next one, I have added one more parameter, brand. Car ID with brand of the car. That's all. Then another parameter also needs model binding. We have to add ID and the brand to our request to have and to be able to call this method. So far, nothing complicated, nothing difficult, or even nothing new. But we have different types of model bindings. Let's have a look at this. Let me comment this one out and look at this. Get car by ID, but I have added from route. By from route, I should add this brand when I am trying to call it in the method. This means if I don't, I would get nothing. I would get an error message. Let me call it, then we can see everything more clear. Okay, I will try to call this API like this. API/car means car controller, then 10 as an ID, and the brand is Benz. Okay, it's working fine. But see, since I did not handle the brand, it said, what is this? Why did you do that? So this means by having from route, we have to handle the parameter during the routing. For the next one, I want to handle this item in query string. So now it is expecting us to enter the brand as a query string. But since it's a query string, I do not need it here anymore, because the only parameter during the routing is the ID. Let's run it and see. Look at this. In the query string, I'm gonna say brand is equal to Benz, BMW, like this. That's all. So now let's comment it out also and have a look at from header. From header means we need to include this item to the header of the request. What is header? Let's see. If you look at Figma, there is a header. Then you can include whatever you have to into the header. Then the item would be included to the request and can be shown in the body, or can be used in the body of the action method or request or something like that. Okay. For time being, we are happy. But as I said, if I have to include an object, then creating so many input parameters like this is a little bit silly. So better to handle the complex objects, something full of properties, especially when we are dealing with post request to create a big item. Handling the parameters like this would be a little bit difficult, silly, tricky, troublesome, or any bad thing that you can imagine. So in the next section, I will show you how we can handle complex object during the model binding. Thank you so much.